Are you a doctor trying to elevate your practice and make your impact on the world long lasting? Ready to go from a hustler to a CEO? Man, you already know. Welcome to the Michael Buffington Show, the podcast that's transforming the lives of doctors. You ready? Let's go.
Hey, I'm Michael Buffington, and welcome back to the show. I want to get right into it today because I want to go through with you the 5 Givens of Life. And let me just say, this is not an original thing that I can take credit for, but this is something that's been passed down through actually multiple iterations. It was something that I taught recently to my Empire guys. And these are guys that do extremely well in business. We're talking high 6-7 figures in practice. They have significant teams, sometimes small, sometimes larger teams, but either way you look at that, significant teams. They are diving in not only on all their business skills, but consistently on their mindset, their patterns, what do they really do on a daily basis? Because they also understand that in business, it's one thing to build the business and all the tools and tactics that are available to do that, but it's also something to sustain. It's why I talk around power, production, profit, and protection in those pillars. And they really want to protect. And protect isn't just about money. It's protecting their mindset. It's protecting their families. It's protecting their well-being of all the things that they've built. So when I went through this with them, it was so meaningful to them, and I really believed it would be meaningful to you. It was something that I shared with my wife. It was something that I shared with my teenage sons. And so I'm like, wait a minute, why don't I share it with everyone here? Because I came across it from one of the people that I listened to over the last couple decades, which is Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins referenced someone else that went through these 5 givens that he followed or learned from in the past. I can't really tell you exactly the guy's name, or I would give him credit. But like anything, I don't know that there's a ton of new material out there. There's just iterations. But I wanted to speak to you not only about what these 5 givens were, have you think about what do these mean to you, and also talk to it with a lot of the chiropractic frame because of some of the things that we encounter. So these 5 givens for life, I'm going to just jump right into it. The first given of life is everything changes and comes to an end. Now, when you hear that everything changes, I think we all get that. One of my quotes all the time is change is the only constant. Like, let that sit for a second. Change is the only constant. So I hope it makes you smile a little bit because I believe it's true. And everything comes to an end. This doesn't sound super positive. You know, it's easy to go, wow, that's freaking awesome. Because when things are going good, and I hope that this message today finds that to be the case for many of you, that things are going really well. You're like, what if they come to an end? Well, that's not the frame I'm trying to put on this, but I think it's reality. And when you've been around as long as I have, and you've been around as long as many of you have in life and business, you know everything changes and it does come to an end. So as I'm shooting this, I'm coming to the end of 2023. You're going to be hearing this in 2024. And know that everything changes, okay? So be ready. Be prepared, because progress takes effort. It takes effort, it takes work, it takes attention, it takes all of those things. The idea that things are going to change and become better and more of what you want without that attention to detail and the intention around it and the things you do won't occur. And what do we all hunt? We all hunt progress. I'm telling you, if you can consistently make progress in your life, you will be happier, you will be more fulfilled, you will know that you're impacting the world, and your world will become better. I believe that with 100% certainty for me. And I know when I'm not making progress, for whatever reason, sometimes even if it's just the stories in my brain and I really could be making progress, is that it's this feeling I don't want. So can you agree with me right now that progress is what we're after? And as long as we're expanding and becoming something more, we're going to be better off. We're going to be better off for ourselves, our families, and the planet. The second given of life is things don't go according to plan. Yeah, newsflash. right? Some of you are like, no shit. Of course they don't go according to plan. It just happens that way. And it's not any fault of your own when things don't always go according to plan. You still have to plan. Does that mean planning is invaluable or not valuable? No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I say it often, and the plan is where we start. We first have to know what that current reality is. Then we build the plan based on that current reality. Then we move into execution and on down that dream equation. Like, that's the way it works. Now, when you make that plan, why do we do course corrections? Why do we do checkpoints? In our case, in Game Changer, why do we do checkpoints every month? Because things change, life changes, variables in the environment, variables in business change. It has to occur. I just said the first given was change is gonna happen. Like, everything changes. So it wouldn't be surprising that things don't go according to plan. The third thing, life is not always fair. Now, it takes me back to some friends that we had over the years that they had this approach. Number one, living here in Texas, pretty significant state fair, if you don't know that. And it runs, over 3 weeks long, I believe. And we would say this, when the kids, and we stole this from other parents that we knew and we were friends with, when the kids would say, that's not fair. Whether they were toddlers or teenagers, that's not fair. They would always say, fair only comes once a year, and that's in October. And I tell you what, I could always get around that, because the reality is, if we cry about and whine about things not being fair all the time, we're going to miss the rest of the year. You're going to spend your life waiting on October and the 3+ weeks that the fair exists. It doesn't. So, like it, don't like it. I haven't seen it to be true any other way. So have a little fun with it, just like we did with our kids. Now, once you say it, here's what you do. Once you say it as toddlers and as they grow up, by the time they're a teenager, they won't even say that it's not fair, because if they said that, they know immediately what they're going to get back to you, and that's the fair only comes once a year, and that's in October. And then they're like, yeah, dad joke, mom joke, whatever it is. Now, another great one has nothing to do with this topic at all, but another great one is when they would ask their kids, hey, will you take out the trash, for example, and they would be like, oh, I don't want to take, or start that. They're like, happy to do it. Happy to do it. So Jim or Susan, if you actually hear this podcast or see this, I'm talking about you. And they would not only would they make their kids say happy to do it, but they would literally make them do that. Like, happy to do it. It actually pains me right now to do that. It's not really my style to do that, but I want to try to be a little more animated for you. Happy to do it. They would have them do that. So much so to the point where it became ingrained in them when they would say, hey, do this. Number one, they would typically not say a word, or later on as they got teenagers and now young adults, they may make a joke about it and say happy to do it. And guess what? They're going to do it to their kids. I guarantee you they're going to do it to their kids. So you talk about legacy, that's one of them. So life is not always fair. It doesn't mean it's not fair sometimes, but it is not always fair, and you can't depend on it. And some of that goes back to us. Like, we get what we tolerate in ourselves. So if you don't like something, guess what? You have the power to change it. Will it be fair? Will it require work? Will it do all those things? Yes. But yes, it's going to require work. And no, it won't always be fair, but you can impact it as soon as you won't tolerate it. Because when you don't tolerate it, it goes from a should to a must. I should do this. I should do that. I will do this. I must do that. When it's a must, you will actually put in the time, energy, and the resources to make something happen. Now, the fourth given of life, and that is pain is a part of life. Pain is a part of life. Suffering is a choice. Now, I immediately always think, anytime I say something as an absolute, like, is that really an absolute? Pain is part of life. I believe that's an absolute. It's, unfortunately, whether it's physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain, and I could expand on that even further, like, pain will occur. You can lose people. You could lose things. You could, most importantly, For me as a chiropractor, you could lose your health. There are things that you can't get back, and there is pain around that, no doubt about it. And I know everybody listening to this has had painful moments. Some of you have had longer painful seasons in your life than I want you to have for sure. But pain is going to be there. Now, what I mean by suffering is a choice. Some people, guess what? Your circumstances put you into what I would call like literal suffering. And I've seen it when I've watched patients over the years. Sometimes it was their choices. Sometimes it wasn't their choices, but they had to endure certain things going on in their health. And to me, there was suffering involved in that. And some of that wasn't a choice. What I'm talking about, the choice part, is really your mindset around it and how long you stay in it. Because if you allow the stories and everything around it to become so big, you will put yourself in a much more in a suffering position. And I'll give you an example. So I'm going to always put it out here on the line. So I was part of a practice management group that was really impactful in my success. A lot of great people, great systems, all that. I left that group, but I didn't really leave that group willingly. It was a mess. It was a lot of miscommunication. Most of that has been cleaned up. But what occurred at the time is all the people in my Rolodex, almost all, and we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of people in my Rolodex, totally disappeared from my life. Totally. Never another phone call, never another text, never another anything. All on what they believed to be true, and some things in there could have been true. That's not the story that I want to get into. But in talking about pain as a part of life, that was painful. It felt like a divorce. It felt like a betrayal, which I'm sure some of them felt that on the other side. There was all these emotions around that everybody had the right to have. That being said, suffering for me was laying on the guest room floor at 3 a.m. thinking about it. My very first podcast, I talk about how that went on for me in my personal life around my son, but my oldest son. But in this case, it was around business, but it was really about the relationships. And I put myself and I created all these false narratives. I created this about what people must be thinking or what was the truth. And I knew what was in my heart, and I knew what I did or did not do, and felt all these other things. Keyword felt. All these feelings led to things that may or may not have been true. And I put myself in a suffering position. I put myself there over and over, and that got bigger and bigger and bigger. The pain was real, but I suffered much longer than I needed to, and it took a little bit to work myself out of it, quite frankly, like it often will. So that's why I want to encourage you today. Like the suffering is a choice. The pain is the given, and the suffering is a choice that you make one way or another. So I'm just encouraging you not to stay there. Get the tools, get the tactics, get the help, get the people around you to help you overcome that so you can get back to doing, because you can use that pain to drive you. And I have in every instance of my life where there was pain, I use it to drive me. If you don't use it to drive you, what does it do to you? It defeats you. It knocks you down. And if you don't get up, or you don't get up quickly, every time you get knocked down, it's a little easier to stay down. It's like that boxing match. The first time the guy goes down, he acts like it's a slip, oh, I lost my footing, I slipped, I'm good. And often they pop up, and sometimes maybe it was, clean the gloves, boom, here, they're back at it. If he's been knocked down a couple times, he's getting foggy, he's in a little bit of trouble. And if it takes him longer and longer to get up, the likelihood that he's going to stay down for the 10 count is much, much greater. So you don't want to do that. And then the fifth given of life, which maybe is the toughest one of all, and that is people are not always loving and loyal. Let that one sit for a minute. People are not always loving and loyal. And when I think about that, I'm like, okay, usually with this show, I want to bring things that serve you. I want to bring things that build you. I want to bring things that make you better. But I think to do that, sometimes you have to face these realities. Because again, if you're not working from a current reality, how can your plan have any merit to it? How can you execute on that plan? Then how do you even set timetables on that execution to get to the version of you and the life and the business that you say you want? So people are not. Guess what? I have not always been. I've made mistakes. I've done things that I could say, well, I wasn't loving in that instance. I wasn't loyal. You can put different connotations to the extreme of loyalty, to the most maybe smallest example of loyalty. But bottom line, I know that I have failed in these areas before. So I fit this. People are not always. It doesn't mean they aren't loving and loyal, because people, mostly, I believe most people by nature are loving. Many people, not all, maybe not even most, but many people, the ones in my circle, are very loyal. And that matters. But you can't set yourself up, because it goes right back to the pain is part of life. And whenever we have that person that doesn't meet our expectations, and maybe they don't show the love back, or they're not as loyal back. I mean, I could talk about team members over the years that honestly, I thought I gave them everything I had. I showed up. I took care of people in the practice. I did, I invested in them, whether it was lunches and dinners or trainings and talks and discussions. And I really wanted them to be better, not just professionally, but personally. So you can tell that one, those are painful times in life where you feel like you gave everything, or you gave a lot at the very least, and you didn't get it returned and reciprocated. And that's true. So it's, it hurts. But again, suffering about it is a choice that we make rather than building it. So with these 5 givens, there's so many things that we can do. And when I shared it with the guys in Empire, they had a lot of, they all had, depending on who they are and where they are in life and business, they had a different thing here that pinged them. But for them, it gave them something to work on from a mental framework. Because I believe, and I say often, your skill set will never outperform your mindset. So people will often chase skill sets over and over and over, and add to the skill set, and add to the skill set, and add to the skill set, add to the letters behind the name, add to the degrees, add to that. For what? What does it actually do? Because it will still be capped always by this and this. It's true for me. It's true for you. It'll be true for everyone. Whether they agree or don't agree, it doesn't change the facts. So the quality of your life is really dependent on your ability to navigate through these things and the speed in which you can do it. That matters, because at that level, you'll be able to deal with the uncertainties that life throws at us. So where in your life right now, do you look at these 5 givens, you're like, yeah, they're there, okay? And probably the biggest one, I'll just tell you the biggest one that stuck out to me was that suffering is a choice. This is a powerful thing. And if I choose to stay there, whether it's my body, whether it's my being, whether it's my balance, my relationships, or my business, if I choose to stay in a spot and don't take actions, if I choose to not get help, if I choose not to leverage some of the relationships I have for the knowledge and experience, if I choose not to learn from people, if I choose not to go and use my resources to better my situation, then I'm suffering. So as always, at the end of this, that's why it matters to learn daily, live fully, lead boldly, and just remember, your legacy is yours. And never forget it. I'll talk to you soon. Share this up with somebody that needs to hear it, because these 5 givens, this isn't just in chiropractic practice. This isn't just in business. This is the 5 givens of life. It's every form of life. So whether it's a friend, a colleague, somebody, please share it up. Give them an opportunity to glean something from that can move their life forward from this and make us all better together, as well as individually for our families and our communities, but really the world at large. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.